zoom in because my room and my hair and everything is a disaster. But we will make it through, and I can't wait to discuss A Flicker in the Dark with you guys. I love me a good thriller, and I am really excited to talk about this one because I have some thoughts and I have some mixed feelings on this. So definitely as you join, say hey in the chat and let me know your thoughts on this book. And thank you just so much for being here. And this is our first book club of 2022. But it's the last book club that I will be doing in this room because for February, I will officially be at my new place and I'm going to have like a reading nook and all this stuff. I'm so excited. So that will be a new like setup and everything. So this book was like a wild ride, and I would love your thoughts as you're like joining to hear about, did you enjoy this book? Was it like an instant, like you were hooked, or were you just like, was it a slow burn? Were you into it right away? All that good stuff that we typically talk about at the beginning, and there will be spoilers, so beware if you haven't finished reading this yet. And definitely say hey when you join the chat. But I have my notes as always, and we will go over like all the main plot points and just our thoughts on this story because it was, I thought, a really, really unique like concept for a thriller. I at least haven't read anything that was from the perspective of like the child of like a serial killer. Of course, this is like a fictional story, but it was interesting to hear that perspective of like growing up loving this person who ended up being like a really, really bad person. And then the twist at the end, oh my god, I can't wait to talk about that. But yeah, so I have some like tabs of where I thought like things were really wild and really crazy, but I love to just start out with if you enjoyed the book, what you thought of the main characters, all of that jazz. So I enjoyed this book for the most part, I would say. I wasn't obsessed, and I get like very, very into things, like everything. So usually with thrillers especially, I'm like super hooked, can't like put it down. This one I didn't read super fast. I kind of read it, put it down, read it, put it down, and it was like, that's like kind of a bad sign for me, to be honest. But the middle of the book, that is what I really enjoyed. Like the first, I don't know how many chapters, but the first like quarter of the book or fifth of the book, it was just kind of like, okay, like her boyfriend seems weird. He seems like too perfect. Her brother seems weird, like that he's like lurking in the shadows and stuff like that. And she obviously, Chloe, has like unresolved like mental health like problems and struggles and abuses like prescription medication that she like falsifies prescriptions for her boyfriend for, so like that she takes. So you were like, okay, she's kind of an unreliable narrator, but like her dad's a serial killer. Like she's been through some shit, basically. So, and I thought she was a pretty, like, I don't know, she was a pretty good main character. Like, sometimes I read thrillers and I'm just like, I don't like this main character at all. Chloe, I felt like pretty good about for the most part. Like, I thought that she was sympathetic. Like, I was sympathetic with her, even though she kind of like towed the line of some of the things she did. But overall, I did enjoy, um, her, and I enjoyed the like premise, I guess. Hey Jules, aw, no problem. I don't want to spoil it for you, so thanks so much for dropping. And so I really liked the middle of the book, essentially, is what it boils down to. I just thought it was so gripping, trying to figure out from like these different people that kind of seemed like they were entering her life at this like pivotal time of this 20th anniversary of like the year that her dad was arrested and everything. And so, like, I thought that the New York Times like writer Aaron, he was a very interesting character to me. I thought that was like a good way to kind of have more details, and that led her down that path of the copycat idea. And then Burt Rhodes, I thought that was like such an interesting addition to it of just like not knowing, is he the one, even though like his kid was one of the victims. He was a pretty like convincing, I guess, like scapegoat or whatever during the time of us figuring out and Chloe trying to figure out who is this copycat and all that jazz. So I was especially like really hooked when Burt Rhodes came into the picture. So like the first thing that I wrote down, like the first moment that I wrote down where I was like really like, oh my god, like this is a thriller, was when Burt acknowledges that he knows who Chloe is, because like when he came into her house, it was like they weren't acknowledging the other as like someone they knew from their past, and so I was like, oh my gosh, maybe he doesn't recognize her, remember her, whatever. And then when he was like, oh my god, like of course I know who you are and all that stuff, like that was truly terrifying. Like the idea of someone being in your home, like your safe space, and you're all alone, especially as a woman, and there's like this scary dude that has like a hatred for your father, hatred for you for like being related to him, and it was just like the wildest thing. I was so scared of what might happen to her. So I was relieved that nothing horrible happened in that moment, but that was, I think, like a pivotal moment for me when it like this story can be pretty intense, because a lot of it to that point was like, of course, the horrible murders, but you were more like removed from it. It wasn't as like in the moment like that part was. So I really enjoyed that. Um, and so of course then Chloe goes and is trying to convince the police that Burt Rhodes should be like a suspect and that he is the copycat. And I thought it was like pretty interesting how skeptical the police were, or the detectives, whoever, that they were of Chloe. I guess just because of her like history. And I also thought it was interesting, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that she thought that people didn't know who she was related to. Like, I'm pretty sure the police knew right away that you were related to like that serial killer. Like, I don't know, there was like a few times when she was like, I don't want to open up like the can of worms and have the police suspect me because of who my father is. And I was like, I'm sure they already know who you are. Like, I just thought that was a little like naive and funny. But whatever. So for possible suspects at this point, I had written down Daniel, her fiance. I wrote number one suspect, but could be too obvious, because it was just like so, like he was just so perfect, and they were focusing on how perfect he was so much, and like she was so I guess like weirded out about that I was like, that's so obvious. That would be so boring if he is like really the one, you know? So I also wrote down her brother Cooper. I didn't like extrapolate on that. I was just like, he seems weird. Like he's just a little off, it seems, with him, like, not really being a people person anymore. Like, of course, you really change from high school to adulthood, but just seeing, like, how much of, like, a, like, star kind of he was, and then now at her party and stuff, he would just be, like, lurking in the background, and then he, like, went through the woods. Like, that was a little weird to me. So he was a suspect on my list, and then Burt Rhodes I wrote. So, definitely, like, I would say the majority of the book was, like, her focusing on her fiancé, and, definitely a turning point for that was when she found, like, the jewelry in Daniel's closet, and that also made my heart stop. I was like, "Are you serious?" Like, we were only, like, halfway through the book, and I was like, "He's the killer." Like, it was such a, like, good moment because I was like, what else is gonna happen in this book? Is kind of where my head went because I was like, well, if we know who the killer is, that kind of wraps it up. But I think that's where the parts of the book that I most enjoyed happened was when she was trying to, like, find Daniel in his lies. I thought that was, like, the best part of this whole book. Like, it was kind of, like, going down a path I wasn't sure if it would be that interesting or not, but then that middle part where she was just, like, full on suspecting him of being a serial killer, having the jewelry in his room, and, like, hiding it, and, like, the copycat nature of, like, doing that. It was just like, "Oh my god," like, not only do we know who the murderer is, she's gonna, like, trap him and, like, make him, like, basically show him that she knows, but wait until she has evidence. So you're like, "Oh my god, Daniel's the murderer, Chloe is his fiancé, and, like, he was obsessed with her dad, who was the serial killer." So it was just like, OMG, OMG. And so, like, there were all these moments then, like, during that whole part where it was like, Daniel is going to kill Chloe at any moment, or he's, like, showing off, like, that he won't get caught or whatever. Like, when he took Chloe, like blindfolded her or, like, something like that. I can't remember if she just closed her eyes or he, like, blindfolded her, but he was like, oh, no, I don't think she was blindfolded at all, but he was like, "We're going, and I'm not telling you where we're going," and he was, like, so weird, and they were, like, going somewhere she didn't know where they were, and she was, like, so scared, like, "Oh my god, he's gonna kill me out here," like, we're going to the middle of nowhere, and, like, that was such a good part because you were like, "Oh my god," like, she's literally engaged to a serial killer, like, it was I just loved it. I loved that whole part, and that's when she realized also how she knew the first victim from, like, where she would have recognized her from, and it was, like, their wedding venue tour. The girl Aubrey was granddaughter of, like, the owners of the venue. She was, like, sitting out there, and Daniel had stared at her and her, like, youthful beauty and everything. Um, so we're like, "Oh my god," like, Daniel knew these girls, like, the other girl was one of Chloe's clients, and then her body was found, like, outside of, like, that building, and that was, like, really traumatic. Like, to imagine that, like, that was, like, oh my god, that was horrifying. Um, and so now you also know she has a connection to the other, victim, and her fiancé would have had, like, connections to them as well. So then you're like, "Okay, Daniel's definitely the murderer. Chloe is trying to catch him, but she, like, will not go to the police." Like, she's just like she doesn't wanna go to the police without her own evidence, which, like, mad respect, but also, like, oh my god, like, so, if you have evidence, just go to the police, I feel like. So, anyhow, the police, like, she either goes to them or the police, like, want to interview her again. I can't remember exactly who initiates it, but they like basically are like, you think your fiance is the murderer now, but you have a history of accusing like your college boyfriend of practically the same thing, but he was just like cheating on you. So like that whole part like really made you question Chloe and like question her like sanity. And that's like such a trope in like a lot of thrillers, which I don't fully like love that trope of like the crazy woman of like not being able to trust herself or other people trust her. Like the woman in the window, that's like the best example of that trope to me. But you're like, oh my god, like this is bad. Like this is an actual example of her like just feeling like people around her, especially men, are like capable of doing what her father did. And so like that whole scene of like her explaining what happened in college and like the blood all over her um roommate sheets and how she like put her hand into it, I was like, Chloe, like that is disgusting. Like if I saw blood all over someone's sheets, the last thing I would do is touch it. Like that is literally like I just couldn't believe it when she did that. But like she was like, oh my god, my boyfriend is like being really weird, and like my roommate's gone and he only started acting weird when she went missing, and so he definitely killed her. Like there's blood in her bed. Like oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And then we find out that her boyfriend and her roommate were just like hooking up behind her back, and he was like trying to break up with her, but like she wouldn't like let him go essentially. And the blood was because of Sarah's like miscarriage, I think. So like oh my god, that was like so disturbing and like really horrifying for Chloe to have gone through that. But also like to assume that because your boyfriend's acting weird and your roommate's not there, that he like killed her, that is like kind of jumping to a lot of like conclusions. So I understand in a sense like why the police were like, you might be doing the same thing now with your perfect fiance David or Daniel. What is his name? Daniel? Yeah, I keep thinking it's David. I don't know why. But so after that, you're like, okay, the police like don't trust her at all. Do I even trust her judgment now? Like it makes you like really question her. And the detective insinuates that now Chloe is a suspect because of like her connections with like all these people basically, and that she has the necklace. Like she knew the girl, she was at the like the cemetery when she was the one that found the jewelry. Like it's just a lot stacked up against her. So you're like, great. Like Chloe, I never believed that Chloe was the one that did it, but it really did seem like they could have like blamed it on her with all that kind of was going on. So then Chloe, behind Daniel's back, meets up with Aaron, the hottie from the New York Times, who was investigating like the whole thing. That's why she got in touch with him, was that he was investigating and doing a story on her dad. And so they are like working together to investigate the disappearance, like the cold case disappearance of Sophie Briggs, who is Daniel's sister. That to me was one of the best like twists of this book. And like, I don't remember if like it was already said that she was like Daniel's sister. Like I think they just said Sophie. They never said her full name. But like for me, it was such a bomb drop, and I was like, oh my god, this is insanity. Like his sister is one of the victims, and he ended up like falling in love with the serial killer's daughter. Like that's a little too coincidental. So you're still like totally convinced it's Daniel, and like now they're getting all this dirt on him from his mom, and then holy effing shit, the wedding ring, the engagement ring was Sophie's ring. That gave me chills all over my body. I was like, oh my god, he gave her his dead sister's ring to his fiance. He might have killed his sister. And now that is what his fiance is wearing. And so it was just like creepy beyond creeperson. Like it was just like, oh my god, I could not believe that part. Like where the mom was like, where'd you get that ring? That was Sophie's ring, blah, blah, blah. And she's like going crazy, which I can only imagine. Like that would be so terrifying. Like to be like, how do you have this ring and you're asking me about my daughter and you're wearing her ring and that's been missing for like 10 years or whatever, or 20 years. So that was like absolutely insane. And so her and Aaron like are like, oh my god, this is like whatever. They're like, we cracked the case, you know? And that's when they hook up in the motel, and he seems like a little weird. Like that's when I first started getting like weird vibes from him. And I would have to go back and see if I like felt weird vibes from him in the past, but like he felt like a good guy at the time. But definitely in the motel, I was like, he's weird. Like, why is he just like, yeah, have all these like pills? Like, I don't care. Like, it was just kind of like weird that he wouldn't be like just a little concerned for Chloe's like abuse of drugs and stuff like that. So, I was like, that's weird. He like gave her like 2 pills, and then she wakes up like a day later, and that doesn't worry her. Like she's like a little weirded out. She's like, "Oh my god, I slept for like 24 hours." I instantaneously was like, she was drugged. Like he gave her either something else in addition to those pills, or like they were stronger than she thought, or like I don't even know. But like for her not to really like think about it was weird to me. So I felt like a little like bad vibes about Aaron, but I didn't expect what came next. So then she's like, I have to go back to like, I forget what her town's name is, but like her hometown. And she goes back to her like literal childhood home, which has been abandoned. And I was like, oh my god, this is so creepy. Like I can't remember. This is being turned into a show, I'm pretty sure. I think that's one of the reasons I picked it. But this will be such a good like visual, like this whole thing will be just so good in like a TV show or movie version. But she goes back to her childhood home, and she's searching for Daniel and her like friend's daughter Riley, because Riley is now missing, and it's like, of course it's Daniel. Like he was at the engagement party. He saw her there, he stared at her. Like that's like a thing, is like all these like creepy men like always are staring at these teenage girls. And so she's like, it was definitely him because he was there. He has like access to her, like knows where she lives and stuff. And so she goes into her childhood home, and super creepy shit going on. And then Aaron is there, and it's just like, how are you here? Like, why are you here? What's going on? Just like literally I have chills like remembering this scene, because you're like, oh my god, like, it's Aaron. And so then we, like, find out that, like, Aaron was the one doing the murders, the recent murders, and he was like, "He made me do it," and then Chloe shot him. So you're like, "Oh my god, it was Aaron. Like, why did we suspect Daniel?" Like, we're so dumb. But Daniel really seemed like he was up to no good. So, Aaron is out of the picture. Aaron is actually not Aaron. He was like impersonating him, and that's going to be interesting to see, like, in like a visual way how they do that, because like, yeah, he must look pretty similar to the picture of the real Aaron, but like, how similar did they look? Like, I just can't imagine if Chloe did a side by side, she'd be like, "Oh yeah, that was him." Like, I was very trusting, I guess, of Erin, which seems very unlike her. Like, she didn't trust anyone else, but she trusts Erin. And then she had to kill him. So she's like, "What the hell?" Like, Aaron is this other person that I just like don't even know. He's like, "I'm nobody." And that was like chilling for him to say that. And then you like realize, oh my god, like, was he doing this for her dad? Like, he would have had access to her dad for this story, and maybe, or like whatever, like, was he talking to her dad and he was like telling him to be like the copycat or something? So then you're like, oh my god, it's not Daniel, or it's probably not Daniel, like, I don't know. But Aaron did the recent murders. Like, who was he working with or for? Because I was still very skeptical of Daniel at this point. Like, he's just like too perfect. I still don't like Daniel. And so then her and Daniel like have this little like powwow, and they're like going through like all this stuff, and she's like, "It was you. Like, I know it was you, and that, like, you were, you have the jewelry. Like, what more evidence could I have?" So, you're like, "Okay, like, I can't remember all the details, but like, this was like a turning point, obviously, when she talked to Daniel." And so we find out that Daniel is lying about where he's going all the time, but it's because his sister is still alive. And he goes to visit his sister, and like, he helped her escape like their abusive father, essentially. So you're like, oh my god, Daniel's a liar, but he's like a good dude, apparently. Which I just didn't love that. I just like didn't believe it, I guess. Like, it kind of was a little bit of a letdown for me. Like, it makes sense, sort of, but it also was like, he was really weird, and like, he didn't care that Chloe had PTSD, and did like a surprise party and took her to the woods, and like did all this stuff that scared her. Like, I still don't like Daniel. Like, I don't care what he does, or how like great of a brother he is or whatever. Like, he is a weird dude no matter what. But then we like totally, like, it was like one page was her with Daniel, and then the next page like Cooper was coming into her house, and I just thought that was a little like whiplash-y for me. But Cooper comes over, and basically she confronts her brother about why, like, he has always suspected Daniel, and then she like kind of does her little, like, showing her cards of like how she's added it up, and proves that it was Cooper all along, and that this Aaron, like, faker was a guy that was like obsessed with Cooper as a kid, and was obsessed with their dad and was like the one that like creeped in their window. And he was the one that was like, I'm nobody. And like that's what he said when she like cornered him or whatever, or found out that he was really the murderer. And so she like confronts Cooper and like drugs him, which I was like, Cooper's so dumb. Honestly, like she had an empty pill bottle or whatever. I guess he just assumed she took all of them. But like, I don't know. I guess he didn't suspect his sister at all. But like she drugs him and then he like goes to jail and all of that. So I personally was not really satisfied with the ending. I loved the bulk of the story, like the middle of her like trying to corner Daniel and like going back to her childhood home and like finding out more things about her past. Like all of that was so good to me. And I don't know why I was just like kind of not satisfied with the ending of the story. Like I was just kind of like, oh, like it wasn't super surprising, I guess, and it just wasn't, I don't know. It just wasn't my favorite thriller. But I did enjoy it. I think it will make a great like TV or movie adaptation. I can't remember which it's going to be, but it was like really shocking that it was her brother all along that did it. Her dad took the fall. That was like the most shocking, I think, of like the reveal that it was Cooper, was that her dad took the fall and like her mom fell apart because it was her son, who was this like horrible person. And like really it was just sad that Chloe stopped having a relationship with her dad. I mean, justifiably, because she thought he was like a serial killer. But that her dad took the fall and let a serial killer like roam free and like go free when he knew it was like Cooper. So it was just like kind of sad more than anything, but it wasn't, I guess, as shocking as I wish that it was, because like early on in the book, I just felt weird vibes from Cooper, and so I wasn't like, there wasn't enough in it for me to be shocked that it was him because he was weird. Like if he was just like a like I don't know. I don't know how else it could have gone, but like I thought it was pretty good, but it wasn't my favorite book, essentially, is what I'm trying to get at. But I did think that it was an interesting concept, and this is this first author's debut novel, and I would definitely read her other books whenever those come out. So we'll see, but I did enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoyed it, like pretty much, if not completely. But now I'm going to announce our February book club pick, and we are totally like switching genres to more of like a like fantasy fiction sort of book. And this is an older book that I've seen before, but like kind of forgot about. And then it was on like the book of the month picks for like past fan favorites. And so this is going to be our book for February. And it is Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstance by Ruth Emmy Lang. And so this is like a kind of magical story, which I think is a fun like genre to me. So I'm excited to read this. So here's like a short synopsis. It says The Beast of Extraordinary Circumstances tells the story of Waylon Gray's, oh my gosh, like our lights are like flickering. I felt like they were flickering before, but I wasn't sure. Anyhow, Waylon Gray's, okay, let me start again because I was like taken like out of the moment. Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstance tells the story of Waylon Gray's life from the perspectives of the people who knew him, loved him, and even a few who thought he was just plain weird. Although he doesn't stay in any of their lives for long, he leaves each of them with a story to tell. Stories about a boy who lives with wolves, great storms that evaporate into thin air, fireflies that make phosphorescent honey, and a house filled with spiderwebs and the strange man who inhabits it. In this warm debut novel, Ruth Emmy Lang teaches us about adventure and love and a beautiful written story full of nature and wonder. And this just sounds amazing to me. It gets really great reviews. It seems like it's going to be a really like poetic and like very like visual story. And I just thought it'd be fun to read this together. So I don't know what is going on with that light. Oh, it must be just the light bulb. I am so sorry, you guys. But I am going to wrap this up before it goes out. But there we go. Now we're going to be in the dark. Oh my god. Sorry about the flickering. But anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you'll read Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstance with me in February. And I hope you like dark. Now we are in the dark and it was flickering. That's weird, right? So a little bit of a weird magical moment right there. So anyhow, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for being here and I will see you very soon. Bye.